curso de gerencia y liderazgo. Mi nombre es Jean-Yves, soy coordinador del Centro, y hoy vamos a ver un evento muy interesante. Ya conocen el título, se trata de construir organizaciones resilientes con la ayuda de la psicología positiva. Muy bien. Antes de empezar con el evento propiamente dicho, por favor le ruego enviar preguntas, comentarios por Twitter a ese hashtag IESA, que es la vía que vamos a utilizar para la participación del público. Y cuando digo público, me refiero al público en Internet y el público aquí presente. Nosotros vamos a comunicarnos, a pesar que estemos a unos metros de distancia, a través del hashtag IESA. Ya después les explico, pero aquí tengo dos personas pendientes de las preguntas y los comentarios de Twitter. ¿Ok? Muy bien. Esta tarde vamos a tener un encuentro con el profesor Hoffman. Él es un destacado docente e investigador en psicología positiva. Ha escrito y dado conferencias sobre temas relacionados con el bienestar, la motivación durante más de 30 años. Es profesor de psicología en la Universidad de la ciudad de Nueva York, donde es creador del éxito curso sobre psicología positiva. También mantiene una práctica privada como psicólogo clínico. Es autor de más de 15 libros sobre psicología y campos relacionados. Tiene lo especial es que es un especialista sobre Abraham Maslow y su obra. Él es un biógrafo de Abraham Maslow e inclusive ha editado un libro sobre escrito no publicado anteriormente de este mismo científico. ¿Ok? Ambos libros están traducidos en castellano en particular. Y les he enviado a los que se registraron copia de un material relacionado con esos libros. Como editor de la revista de Psicología Humanística, el Dr. Hoffman publicó recientemente un número especial sobre el tema de la autorrealización. El Dr. Hoffman recibió sus títulos en la Universidad de Cornell y en la Universidad de Michigan en Ann Arbor. Da conferencia en todos los Estados Unidos y en el extranjero, incluyendo las principales universidades de Brasil, China y Japón. Edward, do you hear me? How do you feel? How is everything? No se oye el micrófono.
Sí, tiene que habilitar el micrófono.
They tell me that you must enable your microphone. Please say something. No.
Okay, can you hear now?
Okay, we hear you clear and without any problem. Entonces, if you agree, a few words, introductory words about your presentation, and we will start with your speech. Okay. La conferencia se llama Contruyendo organizaciones con la psicología positiva. Construyendo organización resiliente. A nivel de la resiliencia, la investigación y la academia gerencial ya tiene mucho tiempo atendiendo ese tema. El tema más práctico y más básico es que las organizaciones deben tener procedimiento para prever dificultades, para tener una empresa resiliente, una empresa que sobrevive y aguanta dificultades externas negativas, una organización, y inclusive lograr éxito. Las empresas, como se estudia y como se enseña en las escuelas de gerencia, debe tener aspectos como, por ejemplo, gestión de riesgo. Eso lo hacen los bancos. Los bancos tienen probabilidades de cobranza en algunos de sus clientes. Los bancos manejan la esperanza matemática aplicada a sus carteras de préstamos. Eso, por ejemplo, tiene que ver con resiliencia. Se trata de la empresa de prever, digamos, dificultades en el futuro. Después tenemos, por ejemplo, gestión de crisis, planes de contingencia. Yo he trabajado en una empresa de servicio petrolero, teníamos planes de contingencia. Sabíamos qué hacer en caso de que suceda tal cosa o tal otra. Es un plan de contingencia que necesita una planificación antes que suceda cualquier evento. Eso también ayuda a la resiliencia de la empresa. Hay recuperación de desastre. Hay, por ejemplo, seguridad de información. Una empresa, en particular Internet, tiene un punto débil en cuanto a su información. Cualquier robo, cualquier modificación de base de datos y de base de cliente puede ser muy difícil para la empresa. En consecuencia, tener sistemas de protección de datos es una forma de reforzar la resiliencia de la empresa. Entonces, eso es el primer nivel. Esto es lo que se enseña en cualquier escuela de gerencia, como se enseña en el IESA. El segundo nivel, a nivel de resiliencia, se refiere a recomendar ciertos comportamientos o ciertas prácticas gerenciales. Por ejemplo, yo le puedo mencionar un artículo de un señor George Avery, de la Harvard Business Review, donde él plantea recomendaciones. Por ejemplo, una empresa en tiempo de crisis debe invertir en sus clientes, conservarlos. Una empresa en tiempo de crisis tiene que invertir en innovación. Una empresa en tiempo de crisis debe invertir en recursos humanos y en particular en liderazgo. Entonces, esos son aspectos, son como práctica gerencial que se enseña en la academia, ¿no? Y que tienden también a la resiliencia de la empresa, es decir, su resistencia a entorno negativo e inclusive, digamos, conservar y cultivar oportunidades de éxito para el futuro. Entonces, eso es resiliencia. Ahora bien, lo que vamos a ver hoy con Edward Hoffman es ya un nivel básico que en mi opinión es el fundamento de la resiliencia, que es el ser humano y el individuo. Nosotros vamos a llegar con Edward Hoffman a la psicología y psicología positiva como base para la resiliencia de las organizaciones. If you're ready, Edward, you can start now with the presentation.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me clearly?
Perfectly.
Okay.
Clearly.
Good afternoon, everybody. Buenas tardes. It's a great honor for me to have this opportunity to share my knowledge in psychology with your faculty, staff, and students. I have never been to Venezuela. My hope is that someday I'll be able to meet many of you personally. Professor Simon and I have known each other, I think, for 6 or 7 years. We did some research together, and I was very happy to receive the invitation to share my knowledge with your university when he contacted me several weeks ago. Today, I have about 30 minutes to talk about the topic of psychological resilience and how organizations can make use of this knowledge to become stronger and healthier. I know that Venezuela has been experiencing a great deal of difficulty in the last few years, and that the topic of resilience, therefore, is especially important. Many individuals in Venezuela and many organizations are coping with stress as best as they can, and the topic of resilience focuses on how people can master stress, how they can cope with stress as best as possible. Some of you may know the history of resilience goes back about 30 years. It was first studied by Professor Norman Garmezy. He was one of my professors at Cornell University. He was a visiting professor. And this research came out of studying very poor children in ghettos, very difficult economic circumstances in the United States. Some children, despite the adversity, seem to be coping with stress very well. And this was the first study of resilience. What qualities, what social factors help them to overcome the stress of poverty and crime and violence in their lives? So this gives you some kind of historical context for this. In the world of business, resilience has been extended to understand what makes for employees to cope with stress and to function to their optimal capacity in the business world, in organizations. Now, I didn't prepare, as you know, a PowerPoint because I felt that this was a more personal topic. I didn't want to just give you little bits of information, but I wanted to have a more sustained sort of narrative with you this afternoon. The handouts that I sent to Professor Simon deal with Abraham Maslow's structure for the hierarchy of inborn needs. And I think it gives us a basic structure for understanding what resilience is involved at the individual level. My sense is that an organization is only as strong psychologically as its weakest members. I'll say this again. An organization can only be as strong psychologically as the strength of its weakest members. In any organization, we have people who are thriving psychologically. We use the term now in positive psychology, flourishing. The term Abraham Maslow used was self-actualization. And even in the very difficult stresses of Venezuela right now, there are people who are flourishing, who are self-actualizing. But I don't think that it's the majority, and I don't think even in the United States or countries that are doing very well at the moment, it is the majority. So the question is, what can we do to help people who are functioning in the average level or the below average level who are not coping so well with stress? What does psychology of resilience help us to deal with these people? Because the goal of the organization is to bring everyone to an optimal level of functioning. So in the limited time I have with you today, I can give you some theory, but I also want to give you some practical techniques that help people develop greater resilience. These techniques have been tested scientifically over the last 20 years that positive psychology has existed. And they do work, and they can make all of us stronger, have greater strength to cope with the stresses that we have in our lives, and especially in your country now, the great stresses that many individuals and organizations are facing. So to take a quick look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy, and then I'll look at some of the specifics that come out of positive psychology. If you look at the handout that I provided, Maslow believed that all human beings share certain psychological needs. If you satisfy these needs, people can become more self-actualizing. That is, they become psychologically stronger. The lowest level is the need for safety, physical safety. So the extent to which your organizations can provide that, to give people a sense that they're not isolated. I know Venezuela has one of the highest rates of civil violence of any country in the West today. And we here in the United States know this. We feel this is a very unfortunate situation. The extent that people can feel that they're not alone, that they're not isolated. I completed a study several years ago with one of my colleagues. She has a master's degree in psychology. She and her husband now live in Spain. But we published a study on experience of altruism in Venezuela. And this had a tremendous impact on people's lives. Even one act of altruism, one act of kindness can make people feel that they're not isolated, that they're not all by themselves. So I can't give you any specific recommendations on how to make your organizations have more physical safety. But I can tell you that when people feel that other people are helping them to cope with violence and the threat of violence, it has a great impact on their psychological health. I'd be happy to send Professor Simon this study today or tomorrow. So again, the need for safety is basic. It's not the only need. I've often come to Brazil, which also has a high level of civil violence. This is because my wife is Brazilian. And I was asked questions about this a number of years ago. So it is possible to self-actualize even in a culture that is permeated with civil violence, but it is more difficult to do so. It does lead to feelings of stress, but as I say, this can be counteracted by acts of kindness, acts of altruism that make people feel that they're not isolated, that they're not victimized, that they have friends and colleagues and people, even strangers who care about them. And this was the result of the study that we did in Venezuela about 3 or 4 years ago. The second need that people have, Maslow talked about this, and there's more and more research now, is the need for belongingness, to feel that we're part of a group. This is not something that ever goes away. There's a lot of research now on adolescents, that adolescents who are functioning well do well in a group. They feel that they're part of the school community with teachers and friends and staff. We used to think that everyone has to be a nonconformist. This is the value in my country. Everyone has to be different. Everyone has to be an individual. But the research says that this is not true. People need more than that to feel that they fit into a group. So in Venezuela, your culture is certainly more of a collectivist culture than the United States. But still, people need to feel as much as possible that they have a group identity, that organizations care about them. This is something in the United States that is created with social activities, people having lunch together, having dinner together, having some kind of sporting event. In my country, it might be a baseball game involving employees. Every culture has its own values, but again, this is a very important need people have to feel that they are part of an organization that is thriving, that people have good relations with each other in a group situation, the sense of belongingness. The opposite of that is the sense of isolation. So the more that a healthy organization in Venezuela can make people feel that they're part of an organization, that they're not isolated, this is very good for resilience, for making people psychologically stronger. As I say, it's not but people need to feel that they're different. People need to feel that they're fitting in and that they're belonging, that the organization is thriving and is strong, and they're a part of that strength too. Now we go up higher in Maslow's hierarchy, and we have the need for self-esteem. This means that people feel that they're liked for their personality. This is very important. This translates as the need to have friends, to have what we call a confidant. In my country, this is unfortunately disappearing from the work culture. Studies show that in the United States now, only 1 out of 3 workers says that they have a close friend in the workplace. It was 50% 10 years ago. So it's dropped from 50% to about 33% in 10 years. This is not good for the United States because people spend a good part of their life when they're not sleeping at work. If you take away 7 or 8 hours of sleep, there's only 16 hours in a day, and 6 hours are spent, or 7 hours or 8 hours with their co-workers. So if 2/3 of Americans say they don't have a single friend at work, that's not good for their mental health. I think it's better in South American countries where people tend to be more sociable. I've certainly seen this in my many visits to Brazil, and I suspect it's true in Venezuela. So it's important for people's mental health, for their resilience, to feel that they have friends at work. Not just belongingness, but people that they can be close with. In English we say a confidant, someone that you can trust with your feelings. So this is very important. Organizations that are resilient encourage people to have close relationships at work, to have friendships at work. And of course this often happens outside of the workplace too. But it's a deeper relationship than just a sense of belongingness. Now you go up higher on the Maslow's hierarchy, and you have the need for respect. This is not the same thing as the need to be liked. And I think Maslow is a genius because he was one of the first psychologists to say that human beings have a need to be respected. There's a lot of research that this is true in marriage. People need to feel that they are respected by their wife or their husband. Or if you have children, that your children respect you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. And for parents to let their children know that they respect their children. This is not the same thing as loving their children. Respect has to do with a sense of admiration for someone's talents, for skills, that they're important. In the workplace, this is a very important need that healthy organizations, resilient organizations have, that workers feel that they're respected for their knowledge and for their skills. So that's one part of it. Every worker in a successful organization, one that's resilient, feels that they are respected for their knowledge and for their skills. Of course, this is easier for highly professional workers, people who are engineers, who are managers, but even at lower levels, people have a need to feel respected. The opposite of that would be that they feel disrespected, they feel demeaned, and this is a very negative situation in organizations. So the more that leaders, that managers can help employees feel that they are valued, that they are respected, this leads to a resilient organization. In English, we say this is a feeling of empowerment. I've been to conferences where people talk about very successful companies like the Disney company. And every employee is made to feel valued. Even the people who sweep the sidewalks in the parks feel that they are contributing because customers won't come if the park is dirty and unsanitary. And they do believe that they are fulfilling a valuable role in the organization, even if they're just janitors or custodians. And I was very impressed when I heard about this. I value this at the university where I teach. I always thank the security guards. I greet them. I try to make them feel valued, that they're part of the team. They're not well educated. Actually, most of them come from Latin America, and they have very few skills. But I tell my students they should be thanked. People should have gratitude towards them. People should treat them with respect. And they do, I think, benefit in that kind of setting. So in a resilient organization, everyone is treated with respect. Even the lowest people who clean the bathrooms or who clean out the garbage cans need to be treated with respect, all the way up to the highest level of engineers and managers, people with PhDs and MBAs and so forth. And this is very important. Maslow also said that we need to respect the organization, the mission of the organization. We need to respect our boss, our supervisor, the president. If we don't respect the organization, our motivation will not be at its highest, and we won't be operating at a highest level of psychological strength. So what this means is that organizations have to help the employees to understand what is their mission and to bring the employees on board, as we say in English, to help fulfill this mission. The mission has to be meaningful to the employees if the organization needs to have a strong resilience. And this is especially true in what Maslow called bad circumstances, difficult circumstances, as people face in a country like Venezuela today. So again, what I'm saying is the need to respect the organization, to respect one's boss, to respect the mission becomes very important in order for people to be more resilient at the individual level. And the highest level is what Maslow called self-actualization. And this means that the individual feels that he or she is growing at the job. They're developing new skills. They're developing new talents. Their interests are being challenged. This becomes very important. Certainly this is difficult in a situation like Venezuela, where just economic survival becomes very important. And I know that. I follow the news every day with what's happening in Venezuela. But there's still opportunity for individuals to have self-actualization, to feel that they're growing, that they're challenged, that they're learning new skills. And this will make them operate at a higher level of personal motivation. Maslow also said it's very important for people to feel that they're contributing to the welfare of their country, that they're helping the people. Now, not every company, not every organization is involved in this. Some companies, it's not as obvious how they're helping the larger society. But to the extent that an organization sees as its mission to help poor people, to help people who are having financial stress, even on a part-time basis, this can help the workers feel that they are self-actualizing, that they're helping their country to be a better place. So those are some highlights in the limited time I have to talk about Maslow's hierarchy and how managers can use it. Now I'd like to talk for a few minutes about positive psychology. This came out of the work of Dr. Seligman. He also was one of my professors at Cornell. He was a young man at that time. I was 20 years old, so that was a long time ago. But Seligman, 20 years ago, became the founder of positive psychology, and he's still very active. So some of the topics that I think pertain very much to how organizations can become more resilient come out of positive psychology today. One topic is the role of gratitude, being thankful. Now, it's difficult in a country where people are struggling, and I know struggling for basic necessities, but even then, we can be thankful for what we have. I don't want to lecture you about this. I'm just saying that people can find whatever it is in their life they're thankful for. They're thankful that they have friends in the organization. They're thankful that they have children that they love. They have parents they love. They have brothers and sisters, a husband and wife. These are things that have nothing to do with money, but which can build people's sense of gratitude. And so the extent that an organization can build people's sense of gratitude, this makes people psychologically stronger, and it makes organizations more resilient. Some professors in my country, and I tell this to my students, say if I can give you one piece of advice about how to be psychologically stronger, it's to increase your gratitude in daily life. The more gratitude you feel, the greater your resilience. I was invited 2 years ago to go to Japan to talk about this. As you all know, there was a terrible tsunami that was triggered by an earthquake. 20,000 people died in the space of, 30 minutes, 2 hours. It's inconceivable to me to imagine how the United States would cope with the loss of 20,000 people. And Japan was able to bounce back pretty well. And I was asked to talk about positive psychology and resilience after trauma. This is physical trauma that people experienced. And there is research that shows that gratitude is extremely important. People who have higher levels of gratitude are able to bounce back from trauma. These are people, the survivors lost their homes, they lost everything in a sense, they lost their jobs, but the ones who had greater gratitude were able to cope with this better than the ones who had a lower level of gratitude. So as bad as things are in Venezuela, thank God you haven't had to deal with this kind of trauma that people in Japan had to cope with several years ago. So I think this finding is applicable in Venezuela, in the United States, everywhere. The more people can build up their gratitude in daily life, the stronger they become and the stronger the organization becomes. Now, Dr. Seligman and his colleagues were able to develop a scientific method to increase people's gratitude. So I can explain it to you. It takes 2 or 3 minutes. It's something that any organization can do with its workers. It's basically every day for 21 days, people write down one thing that happened in the day that they feel gratitude for. It might even be that you had one good meal in this day and it was satisfying to you. It might be you had a wonderful time with your son or daughter in helping them with their homework, or you had a nice conversation with your father or your mother on the phone. There are many things that we can be grateful for, and it can be small things. It can't be something dramatic every day. You know, life isn't like a Hollywood movie. It's the small things that make a difference. And they find that when people do this every day for 21 days, they can boost their level of gratitude. 6 months later, after they've done this, they are functioning at a higher level of gratitude and higher level of psychological well-being. So it's a very simple technique. People can keep a journal and do this at home when they leave work, but managers can encourage their workers to do this. Or you can encourage workers on the job to write about one thing that they're grateful for that day. And being realistic that it can be a small thing, but it's something that builds our sense of resilience. I'll mention a couple of other things. Also, optimism is another very important trait that Dr. Seligman has talked about for 20 years. It goes back to the beginning of positive psychology. So I know a few weeks ago when Professor Simon and I were talking, we mentioned the importance of being optimistic about the future. And in positive psychology, like gratitude, this is one of the most important characteristics for psychological well-being and resilience. People who are optimistic are psychologically stronger. This makes sense because if you believe things won't improve, that things will get worse or stay the same, you become weaker psychologically. Mentally and physically, you're not as well able to handle stress. So Dr. Seligman and his colleagues also developed a similar technique, very simple, not the same as gratitude, but similar. And this is something I teach my students also. And what it is, every day, also for 21 days, write about something that turned out better than you expected that day. It could be that the traffic was better than you expected. You know, New York City has terrible traffic. It's gotten unbearable in the last 2 years. It might take twice as long now to get somewhere as it did 5 years ago. So if it takes me less time to get to my university than I expected, it only took an hour instead of an hour and a half, that's something that turned out better than I expected. On a simple level then, to write about something each day that was better than you anticipated it would be. And again, they find that when you do this, it leads to permanent improvement in your optimism. 6 months later, people have greater optimism after they've done this simple activity than if they do something like just writing about a television program or something that has nothing to do with their feelings. So those are two things, and I'll mention one more. I guess I'm pretty close to the end of the 30 minutes. Positive psychology has emphasized the importance of goal setting in order to increase our personal resilience. And we talk about long-term goals, we talk about intermediate goals, and short-term goals. And these need to be written down. Each worker in the organization should be encouraged to set these 3 goals for himself or herself. It's not enough just to keep it in your mind. When you write about it, it seems the brain kind of stores this. The brain learns that this is part of what it has to do. So writing is very important in positive psychology. A short-term goal would be in the next 6 weeks, what do you want to accomplish in your organization? Again, from the lowest levels of the workers to the highest, they should set a short-term goal in writing. And this is something a manager can help them with, can give encouragement, something that's realistic. The goal has to be realistic, and secondly, it has to be measurable. So to say I want to be happier at work, that's not measurable. It has to be something that can be measured. An intermediate goal might be in the next 6 months. What does the worker want to accomplish? And again, it needs to be realistic and it needs to be measurable. And a long-term goal might be 1 year to 2 years. Because of the problems in Venezuela now, maybe 1 year is better. 2 years, it's hard to predict. But what the goal would be in 12 months from now. And again, it needs to be realistic and it needs to be measurable. What skills, what talents, what interests can be developed, can be challenged, can be nurtured in 12 months. And for each worker, I would encourage the manager to help them develop short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals on an individual level. This develops resilience. This makes people psychologically stronger. They're less likely to feel that they're just blown around by what's happening around them in the economy and in the society. So I've given 3 practical techniques, one improving gratitude, one improving optimism, and one goal setting. all of these are scientifically validated now that increase individual resilience. So as I say, I believe organizations are only as resilient as the weakest members. So if we can bring everyone along to increase their resilience, then the entire organization can be psychologically stronger and better able to cope with the stressors that are happening around them. So I'd like to thank all of you for the opportunity to share my knowledge. And as I say, we know in the United States difficulties people are experiencing in Venezuela, and we feel strongly that we will see a better future for your country, and to keep these principles in mind that I've been able to share with you today. But thank you very much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, Edward. This presentation of yours was brilliant. I mean, so interesting. We all know Abraham Maslow. We know the hierarchy of needs, but you put it into the perspective of resilience, and with resilient organization, and that was very, very interesting. Even adding three aspects, I like gratitude, optimism, and goal setting. This is a very strong support that you're giving us for who is managing at this moment.
Thank you.
Sí, en este momento vamos a darle la palabra a nuestros panelistas, quienes van a hacer un comentario personal sobre lo que piensan, cuáles son sus reacciones frente a la conferencia, y después van a hacer una pregunta directa a Eduardo Hoffman. Permítame presentarle la profesora Susana Chu, que está a mi derecha. Susana Chu es una profesora e investigadora del IESA en materias relacionadas con comportamiento organizacional y gestión humana. Es una profesional con más de 12 años de experiencia en sectores tanto público como privado. Tiene una amplia trayectoria como consultora organizacional y específicamente en áreas como recursos humanos, empresas familiares, procesos. Entonces, adelante, profesora, apenas logremos enfocar la cámara sobre Susana Chu. Por favor, adelante. Su micrófono está prendido. Hay un botón encima.
Buenas tardes.
Listo, ok. Muy buenas tardes, muchísimas gracias por su presentación, profesor. Me gustaría sobre todo rescatar los tres aspectos que usted acaba de resaltar, profesor Jean-Yves: la gratitud, el optimismo y la definición de las metas, porque son tres aspectos que podemos perfectamente traducir en nuestro día a día con nuestro equipo de trabajo de forma rápida y sencilla. En este aspecto, porque al final cuando hablamos de resiliencia, parecerá un término amplio, no es ambiguo, es amplio, pero en realidad que todos los días nosotros en nuestra vida cotidiana ejercemos la resiliencia de una u otra manera, tal vez no de manera consciente como resiliencia, pero nos paramos todos los días en esta situación en particular nuestra, que es difícil, con optimismo, porque si no sencillamente no. Entonces, en esa medida que podamos aplicar estos tres consejos que nos está dando el profesor Hoffman en nuestras organizaciones, podemos tener resultados bastante rápidos relativamente. Lo único que veo que en mi experiencia esta es una de las preguntas que le diría al profesor Hoffman, es que a pesar de que tenemos a la manera tradicional de cómo nosotros gerenciamos, porque aún hay tantas empresas o tantas organizaciones que nos aferramos a la forma tradicional de cómo relacionarnos con nuestro equipo de trabajo o con nuestra gente. Incluso creo que culturalmente, desde el aspecto legal, en Venezuela tenemos, las relaciones laborales se han desarrollado desde el punto de vista antagónico. El patrón es el malo y el empleado es el débil. Incluso, no solamente el débil, sino que los vemos desde un punto de vista como de minusvalía, que no son capaces de asumir responsabilidades de su relación. Entonces, creo que es un punto que debemos seguir trabajando. Incluso me atrevo a decir que eso no es solamente un aspecto en Venezuela por nuestras características y por nuestra historia, sino incluso a nivel global. De hecho, una de la pregunta que le tengo al profesor Hoffman, si tiene algún dato en términos de proporción de las empresas en Estados Unidos, como que creo que es la población que más ha estudiado, ¿qué proporción de las organizaciones realmente ponen en práctica estos consejos de la psicología positiva en sus organizaciones para que su empresa sea más resiliente y más exitosa? La parte difícil, profe.
La parte difícil, no.
Ok. Profesor Hoffman.
Sí.
Ajá. Pero se lo puedo hacer en español.
No. Trampa.
Do you have any data on how okay. Do you have any data on how is the proportion of organization is actually practice positive psychology in their organization to be more effective enterprise or civilians?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you very clearly. I'm sorry.
Un examen.
No, es la presentación.
Professor Hoffman.
Mine is...
Okay. Do you have data on how is the proportion of organization with actually have practice of positive psychology in her management strategy?
The question is there data on how organizations can use positive psychology? Is that the question?
Yes.
I think there are studies that have been conducted now in organizational behavior dealing with positive psychology, yes.
Any statistics, data that you could give us?
Not sitting here in my house. I can find some journal articles that might pertain specifically to what I talked about with your group this afternoon. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Do you, Professor Hoffman? Okay, I understand. Do you have any or some person can share with us after this meeting?
I'll try to help out. Sure. Yeah.
Muy bien. Antes de pasar la palabra al profesor Piñango, quisiera recordarles, la cámara no está apuntando hacia mí. Ok, aquí. Ajá, ok. Yo les recuerdo que por favor pueden enviar preguntas o comentarios a través de Twitter utilizando el hashtag IESA, que es nuestra vía de comunicación. Estas preguntas y comentarios están llegando a las personas que están a mi izquierda y en el transcurso de la sesión lo vamos a expresar. Es decir, que vamos a comunicar sus dudas y comentarios a través de internet y a través de Twitter. Ahora, si me permiten, yo quisiera pues cederle la palabra al profesor Ramón Piñango. Les recuerdo que Ramón Piñango es profesor emeritus del IESA, es un especialista en comportamiento organizacional, es un especialista en liderazgo, en organización positiva, en las relaciones entre organizaciones y su contexto social y cultural, en resiliencia organizacional, en entorno adverso y empresas familiares. Adelante, profesor Piñango. No sé si...
Primero comentario en español. La verdad es que muy buenas tardes a todos.
Buenas tardes.
La verdad es que me llamó mucho la atención. Me llamaron la atención ciertas apreciaciones particulares del profesor Hoffman que tienen mucho que ver con lo que aquí trabajamos y decimos y predicamos incluso. Como por ejemplo algo que me impactó, el énfasis del profesor Hoffman, recordando la obra de Maslow, sobre el respeto. Palabra que en particular Olga Bravo y yo destacamos cuando hablamos de resiliencia. El respeto, entre otras cosas, genera compromiso. E insistimos, y hay que insistir en nuestra cultura venezolana, que el respeto no es tratar a otro de usted. Usted profesor, usted doctor, etcétera, etcétera. Es mucho más que eso. La esencia del respeto es, y sigo en esto pensamientos de autores importantes en psicología humanística, es reconocer al otro. Y reconocer al otro significa tomar en cuenta al otro. Y en términos contrarios significa pedirle la opinión al otro, considerar el punto de vista del otro. Y eso, lo debo decir, por lo menos en esta cultura, es muy fácil predicarlo y cuán difícil practicarlo es. Todavía observo yo, como observador de nuestra cotidianidad cultural, social, observo que cuesta trabajo reconocer al otro en la en el espacio de trabajo, pero también en el hogar. Cuesta, es duro, es difícil, parece que es muy difícil. Todavía seguimos creyendo que el usted es la esencia del respeto. Y esto se empata con algo que se está haciendo particularmente dramático en la circunstancia complicada que estamos viviendo. En esta circunstancia complicada, a las élites del país, en las organizaciones, fuera de ellas, al opinar sobre lo que nos está ocurriendo, seguimos practicando cada vez con más intensidad la afición o el deporte, por llamarlo con cierto sarcasmo, de atribuir al venezolano en su cultura, a su manera de ser, buena parte de los males que estamos viviendo. Y que prácticamente lleva a que esto sería perfecto si no hubiera venezolanos acá, si uno sigue la línea argumental en rigor. Es decir, que si fuéramos, qué sé yo, ni siquiera norteamericanos, sino suizos, japoneses, perdona, no menciono a los chinos, tampoco, la cosa sería muy diferente. Políticamente seríamos perfectos. Ese detalle nada más. Entonces, comencemos por referirnos al respeto, por respetarnos a nosotros mismos como venezolanos. No nos respetamos. No nos respetamos. Por cierto, la migración reciente, no me quiero extender mucho, nos golpea porque entonces resulta que no nos están respetando a los venezolanos cuando salimos a Colombia a otro lugar, como nosotros nos respetamos a los colombianos cuando llegaron aquí en los 70. Y colombiano se hizo sinónimo de ladrón. ¿O no? ¿O no? Bueno, nos tocó. Vamos a ver si ahora aprendemos a respetarnos a nosotros mismos. Y si no nos respetamos a nosotros mismos, reconociéndonos que servimos para algo y estamos demostrando que servimos para mucho, si no nos reconocemos eso, vamos muy mal. Y una observación nada más que me encantó, el tema de gratitud. La Asociación Venezolana de Psicología Positiva, de hace unos cuantos años, aplica un cuestionario, unos instrumentos de medición sobre lo que valora una sociedad, lo que valoran unos ciudadanos, un instrumento desarrollado por un conocido psicólogo norteamericano, Martin Seligman. Y la pregunta es, lo que se busca es establecer qué valora. Lo vienen aplicando por más de 10 años, ya van por más de 15.000 personas. ¿Y qué resulta, qué encuentra la Asociación Venezolana de Psicología Positiva que valora el venezolano? Encuentra que lo que más valora es la gratitud. Nos gusta agradecer y que nos agradezcan. Entonces, en las organizaciones, empresas o organizaciones sin fines de lucro, hemos aprendido a agradecer. Y el agradecimiento tiene que ver nuevamente con el tema de reconocer al otro. Entonces, ¿con qué placer, con qué gusto escuchaba yo al profesor Hoffman enfatizar el tema de la gratitud? Y recordar entonces que aquí resulta que culturalmente enfatizamos gratitud, pero choca ese énfasis cultural a veces con la falta de reconocimiento del otro. Y se trata de agradecer no solamente a quienes están en las organizaciones a nuestro nivel, sino también a quienes están en niveles menos brillantes que los que creemos que nosotros. Y el profesor Hoffman decía algo importante: agradecer, reconocer y agradecer el trabajo de, por ejemplo, quien se ocupa de limpiar los baños. Textualmente lo dijo, puse ese ejemplo tan gráfico. Cuando estamos en clase aquí, muchos decimos, si les parece a ustedes, se lo digo yo a mis alumnos con frecuencia, algunos lo deben recordar, si usted cree que no merece el reconocimiento de la limpieza, porque es un trabajo menos importante que el suyo, señor gerente, sáquelo, si no es importante, sáquelo. ¿Por qué va a estar allí? En gente que un trabajo lo puede hacer cualquiera. Haga usted la limpieza de los baños, pues. Haga usted la limpieza de las oficinas, barra, pase la aspiradora. Pero si lo necesita, por favor, es parte de la organización, intégrelo de alguna manera, y hay muchas formas de integrarlo que no podemos ahora por razones de tiempo señalar. Bueno, en eso estamos. Perdón lo largo. Voy a pedirle por favor al profesor Hoffman lo siguiente. Professor Hoffman, will you please point out in a very concrete way one trait, one behavior that you would emphasize as a key point, but just one. If you had to change the world, if you had to change just one point in one organization, in a typical organization, what would you change? Just as in...
Well, as I mentioned in my presentation, gratitude is extremely important, and there's a lot of research on this now. The importance of gratitude in social relationships. So I would say that's a very important building block for organizational resilience.
your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Hoffman and Professor Piñango. Piñango. Oh, in English, Piñango. Ahora quisiera presentarle nuestro invitado sorpresa. Hasta ahora hemos estado en un mundo académico. Es tiempo de dejar la palabra a un empresario. El señor Germán Toro es un empresario exitoso. Además es un conferencista, un articulista, participa en numerosas revistas de gerencia y de economía. Es presidente de Venancham, la Cámara de Comercio Binacional Estados Unidos-Venezuela, y es directivo de numerosas instituciones. En particular es miembro del Consejo Directivo del IESA. Sus temas de investigación y preocupación se relacionan con la responsabilidad social empresarial y el emprendimiento. Adelante, por favor, Germán Toro, escuchamos su comentario y después, por favor, haga una pregunta al profesor Edward Hoffman.
Muchas gracias, Jan. Quiero aclarar que estoy en Florida en este momento, es por unos días y yo vivo en Caracas. Me van a permitir que comience con una anécdota de mi padre. Hace un tiempo a mi mamá no le gustó cómo había salido una foto reciente. Mi papá le dijo, mi amor, espera 10 años y te encantará cómo saliste. Bueno, yo les puedo decir de que es cierto que el tiempo ha envejecido, pero les puedo decir que yo a mi mamá hoy la veo más bella que nunca. Y esto nos da una doble, digamos, una doble faceta en cuanto a este procedimiento de lo que puede ser el deterioro de las cosas. Quiero aclararle al profesor Hoffman que en Venezuela largo plazo es de aquí al lunes. Y quisiera tratar, aunque no soy psicólogo, estoy casado desde hace 33 años con una psicóloga y mi hija es psicóloga, profesora universitaria, y quisiera tratar los temas de las 3 herramientas de la psicología positiva que trató el profesor Hoffman. En cuanto a la gratitud, el trabajo que más atesoro hoy en día es que trabajo por la calidad de la educación de los venezolanos en situación de vulnerabilidad, que son muchos y en situación sumamente compleja. Y les puedo decir una cosa. En Venezuela se habla mucho de la hiperinflación, pero lo que ha venido ocurriendo últimamente, sobre todo, es un hiperempobrecimiento. Nos hemos empobrecido todos y el problema es que los que eran pobres ahora son miserablemente pobres. Sin embargo, el aspecto de gratitud más fuerte que he encontrado yo en mi vida es entre los más pobres. Encuentra uno emocionantes ejemplos de no teniendo casi nada, lo comparten con sus pares, con sus iguales, con sus vecinos, ni siquiera con sus familiares, sino con quien tienen cerca. Y encuentran una sensación de gratitud simplemente por poder dar. Es lo que yo llamo the gratitude of the giver, la gratitud del que da. Y ese sentimiento de gratitud es el más fuerte que he encontrado yo en estos 20 años de deslizamiento de la calidad de vida de todos los venezolanos. En cuanto al optimismo, si bien es cierto que la situación en Venezuela se ha venido deteriorando dramáticamente durante los últimos 20 años, y que hay el riesgo de pensar de que el optimista en el fondo lo que es un ingenuo, yo he encontrado un tipo de optimista que se plantea las cosas de la siguiente manera. Es muy probable que las cosas no mejoren, y desde luego en el corto plazo. Es más probable todavía que las cosas se deterioren. Sin embargo, mi optimismo se arraiga en el hecho de que a pesar de todo, yo y los que están conmigo vamos a hacer el mejor esfuerzo posible porque las cosas mejoren. Y aún no mejorando las cosas, nosotros vamos a mejorar. Y ese es un pozo de optimismo para la cantidad de personas que se encuentran en situación sumamente dramática hoy en día. Yo quiero hacer una pregunta al profesor Hoffman y por lo tanto paso al inglés. If you think that organizations have a personality, just like people have a personality.
Yes.
If you do, what would you say are the most important factors in forming the personality of an organization? Is it the conviction of the top of the organization? Is it something that permeates from down upwards? Is it a combination? Is it a positive leader that could be at any level? It could be a janitor that starts a movement inside the organization in order to imprint a personality to the whole organization. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. There is research. First of all, I think you're right. Organizations have personalities. The research, as I understand it, is that the founder of the organization, the creator, it may be a group of founders, has lasting impact on the personality or culture of the organization. It's very difficult to change that personality or culture once it gets established. So that's one body of knowledge. Most of the change in the United States with companies or organizations comes from the top, from the leader, the president, or of the organization, and he or she creates the culture that goes all the way down. There may be tens of thousands of employees, and that one leader has a tremendous impact. The personality of that leader, their life experiences can influence policy and decision making. But I also think you're right. You can have organizations where, as you say, a janitor, it can be through a union. My mother was very active with the teachers union in the United States. When they had their first strike, she could have been fired. Only 10% of the teachers went on strike, but it became one of the strongest unions in the United States today. It's one of the most powerful unions. So I certainly agree with you that someone at a low level, not at a high level of management or high level of executive, in a group orientation, that's what a union is. It's not one person, it's a group, are able to influence or change the culture or personality of the organization. And 50 years later, this is the case with the New York City teachers. The unions had tremendous impact on the culture of the teachers, on their sense of well-being, their sense of job security and satisfaction. So I think it's a good example. The personality can be influenced from the bottom up, but more typically, at least in my country, it's from the top down. So we'd like to have a leader who has good values, who has humanistic values, and cares about the employees, even at the lowest levels. And some of the very successful companies in the United States have had that fortunate situation. So I hope I've answered your question to some extent.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Muchas gracias, Germán. Ya hemos tenido entonces intervenciones de académicos, intervenciones de empresarios, y ahora voy a cederle la palabra a dos estudiantes nuestros del MBA, quienes han tenido una tarea muy difícil, que es concentrar todas las participaciones que han venido a través de Twitter e intentar fundirlas o intentar, digamos, elaborar dos preguntas principales, reflejo uno de sus intereses personales y reflejo de las participaciones del público a través de Twitter. La primera persona que les voy a presentar es Rubén Rodríguez. Tu profesión es ingeniero y comunicador social. Y pues adelante, Rubén, ¿cómo fue la comunicación con Twitter?
Bueno, muy buenas tardes. Professor, first off, I have to say that we're glad to have you here. This is first try, if you will. We tried to do this at the IESA, try to do this conference more and more because we have gathered a net of people. I can tell you that on and off people have been from Spain, Peru, Chile, Argentina, people that we met on a recent program that we went to Babson, students of the MBA. And well, many questions here. First off, they want to know your internet address, Twitter, Instagram, where they can reach you. I mean, because there are many questions here that we can actually log on to some of them. If you have an address that they can write or follow you on.
Yeah, Professor Simon has that.
Okay. Second off, actually, one of the questions that sparked up, sigo en inglés, si hay alguna duda la lanzo, pero a participant from Argentina said that what are the probable threats behind a group that's identified on a negative and common bond. This has happened in Venezuela more and more. We are striving right now on a difficult situation that I don't think is going to stop for another month or so, or even years. It has been gone for like 20 years. But the thing is that a lot of groups have bonded on a negative thought. This will go as far as a company within a company, or even a society on a building, that actually this group starts off on a negative thought. They have a negative bond. So if we're talking about positive psychology, how can we turn this around, and what are the threats behind this group?
Well, could you give me an example, please, of what you mean by a bond forming on a negative thought?
Yeah, most of the country right now is, I'm going to say 50-50, but we know it's a different number, a political number. But so a lot of people have gathered on trying to fight this diversity on the political basis. And what the thought, or the sparkle, the first spark is, we don't like this. This is bad. So we're gonna make a group and fight this. How can you turn this around? I mean, how can you be a leader to push onto a positive thought rather than starting on a negative thought?
Well, it's a very broad or general question. So my answer would have to be broad and general. But I would say it's to focus. It goes back to the earlier comment I made about goal setting. I think if you set a realistic goal, one that's measurable, that is positive, it probably can reduce some of the negativity. If people see that there's something positive that can be achieved, I would start with very short-term goals then. What can be achieved in the space of 1 month that might have a positive impact on people's lives. As I mentioned earlier, I think in Venezuela right now, making long-term goals is probably not as helpful, but having some very beneficial short-term goals that people can work on and see as realistic would be beneficial, I think. Things that can benefit the organization in a short period of time. And again, I think Maslow's hierarchy is a useful way of conceptualizing it.
Buenas tardes, soy Juan Venegas, soy ingeniero de profesión, estoy terminando. Mis comentarios, muy interesantes los que han colocado en Twitter. Veo un cliché muy grande en la resiliencia, como fue hace unos años el tema del talento humano. Muchas organizaciones hablaban del talento humano, que era lo más importante de la empresa, pero no hacían nada para realmente darle el valor que tiene y que va a tener siempre, ¿no? Veo muchas organizaciones hoy en día hablando de la resiliencia, haciendo eventos, tratando de dar capacitaciones a sus empleados sobre la resiliencia, sobre todo porque estamos en un entorno que lo requiere, es imperativo, no solamente a nivel global, sino en Venezuela. Y veo a veces que se queda en un cliché. A mí me gustaría, en las conversaciones que tengo en el trabajo, que eso dejara de ser un cliché, que si alguien va a hablar de resiliencia, que vaya más allá. Como bien han dicho estos dos profesores, una cosa que me queda bien interesante, bien clara, es el tema del optimismo, que es el segundo gol que menciona el profesor Hoffman. El empresario decía que hay que hacer un esfuerzo. ¿Por qué? Porque si no logramos nada, nos cambiamos a nosotros. Entonces, una manera que veo yo de conectar los dots es ¿cómo podemos hacer para que la resiliencia deje de ser un cliché, incluso si no lo vemos? Es hacer un esfuerzo. Si no logramos nada en el entorno, nosotros vamos a cambiar. Eventualmente, si nosotros cambiamos, el entorno va a cambiar. Así sea nuestro primer metro cuadrado, de ahí para adelante es ganancia. Veo también con el tema del optimismo, que es bien interesante, que ya la ventaja competitiva ya es pasado. Y es pasado hace rato. Ahora lo que necesitamos es la ventaja cooperativa. Y esa ventaja cooperativa se está necesitando también desde hace rato. Una manera de lograr esa ventaja cooperativa, más que la competitiva, es esa resiliencia, es esa capacidad de adaptarnos y fortalecernos hacia la resiliencia en el entorno, dentro de un ambiente adverso, si no, no tendría sentido. Y una manera de lograr eso es con ese pensamiento positivo, es ser optimista y realista, que es parte de lo primordial en el tema de la resiliencia, ¿no? Otra cosa que noto es que uno viaja por Latinoamérica y uno conversa con empresarios y a veces uno lo está escuchando y dice, ya, ¿estoy en Venezuela o en qué país estoy? Ellos ven sus países como realmente nosotros estamos ahorita. Entonces, todo es cíclico. Ellos han pasado por ciclos y hay personas, hay empresarios, hay industrias, hay sectores que no se han dado cuenta de que ya el ciclo pasó, de que ya están bien, de que ya están en otra onda, de que ya están con un futuro mucho mejor, inmediato, cercano, largo, depende del sector, y se quedan en una nube de clichés. Viven hablando de la resiliencia, viven hablando de los entornos, viven hablando de un sinfín de términos acuñados nuevos importantes para el entorno global, pero se quedan ahí. Entonces, yo entendí ahí que nosotros tenemos que entender que podemos llegar a ser esas personas pronto, en 1 año, en 2 años, en 3, quién sabe, pero prontamente aquí va a haber gente que va a estar hablando como si estuviéramos ahorita, cuando el entorno nuestro ya esté arreglado por el esfuerzo que nosotros mismos y a nivel cooperativo estemos haciendo. Y culmino con mi pregunta al profesor Hoffman. Profesor Hoffman.
Sí.
Okay. There are people and organizations here that are improving the improvement process and are changing the adapting process to change as well. And they are already building the new Venezuela with this psychological skill.
Yes.
Besides making a habit setting goals with the first 2 objectives, what other goal is important to you?
I'm sorry, there was something wrong with the microphone. I couldn't hear the last part.
Okay. Besides making an habit setting goals, the first 2 objectives, you said 3. First, increase your gratitude. Second, improving optimism.
Right.
And third, goal setting.
Yeah.
I can apply goal setting with the first 2. What is the third? What could be the third objective to goal setting besides the first 2?
Oh, well, goal setting would also reflect what the individual employee would like to learn on the job, what skills, what knowledge that individual would like to achieve, and in the company, let's say within the next, I think 1 month is too short, 6 months period, again, maybe up to 1 year, but that would be an individual goal for the employee that would be based on his or her job description. And the focus would be on skills and knowledge. What could the manager, supervisor do to help that individual reach that goal, either short-term or intermediate? So that's where the goal setting would come in. Does that help?
Muy bien, vamos a concluir. O sea, yo detrás de la necesidad de Maslow, detrás de la gratitud, del optimismo y del goal setting, hay como aspecto que para mí son muy importantes. Es, por ejemplo, la visión organizativa, que no hemos mencionado mucho. Está también la comunicación, que está subyacente detrás de todos esos conceptos que hemos visto. Está también el consenso. Me gusta el consenso. Me gusta ese enfoque de búsqueda que también tiene que ver con la psicología positiva. Pero vamos a tener que concluir, ya estamos llegando a la hora. Hay varios detalles. Primero, hemos recibido, como ya les mencionamos, Twitter de muchísimos países. Para mí es un gran orgullo que hayamos tenido ese alcance. Hemos tenido unos 50 personas que al mismo tiempo que ustedes han escuchado, han seguido esa conferencia. Es, digamos, una mina y un camino que vamos a seguir. O sea, tener eventos también en Internet, o sea, presencial y en Internet. Yo, o sea, voy a terminar con la gratitud. Yo estoy, digamos, contento y agradecido de todo el mundo. Thank you very much, Edward. It was your participation and your support was very generous. Thank you very much. That was very nice.
Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Gracias a todos presentes, gracias a la gerencia a los panelistas, gracias a la gerencia de comunicación que ha organizado el evento, a la gerencia de informática y telecomunicación, a servicios generales, gracias a todos los presentes, a los estudiantes que vinieron, a Germán Toro, que está aquí desde Miami, que nos ha dado el punto de vista empresarial. Muchísimas gracias a todos y hasta la próxima.